The blood on her wedding dress had long since turned brown, but Martha Owens could still see it every time she closed her eyes, still feel the sticky warmth of it on her hands as she had tried in vain to stop the bleeding from wounds that were never meant to heal. 2 years had passed since that terrible day in the summer of 1882, when Clayton Marsh, the man she had loved with all her heart, had beaten her unconscious on what was supposed to be their wedding night after she discovered he had murdered her father for the small inheritance she would receive. The marshal in Silver Creek, Nevada, had called it self-defense when Clayton's body was found with her father's old pistol beside him, shot through the heart by Martha's own trembling hand as he came at her one final time. She had killed a man, saved her own life, but lost something precious in the process. Her ability to trust, to hope, to believe that love could be anything other than a beautiful lie that concealed a monster's true face. Now, in the spring of 1884, Martha stood on the wooden platform of the train station in Alta, Utah, a small mining town nestled in the Wasatch Mountains where copper and silver drew men seeking fortune, and where she hoped to disappear into anonymity. She was 24 years old, felt 40, and carried everything she owned in a single worn carpetbag. Her aunt's letter had been brief but kind, offering her a position helping run the boarding house on Main Street, and Martha had accepted without hesitation. Anywhere was better than Silver Creek, where people whispered behind their hands and men looked at her with either pity or something far worse. The mountain air was crisp and thin, scented with pine and the distant promise of snow that still capped the highest peaks despite the warming season. Martha pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and stepped down onto the dusty street, her boots finding purchase on ground that felt as uncertain as her future. The town sprawled before her in that haphazard way of mining communities, buildings constructed wherever convenient, painted in faded colors that spoke of hard winters and harder lives. Miss Owens, a woman's voice, strong and warm, cut through Martha's observation. Martha turned to find a sturdy woman in her 50s approaching, her gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical bun, her dress simple but clean. This had to be Aunt Dorothy, her mother's sister, whom Martha had only met once as a small child. Aunt Dorothy. Martha managed a smile that felt rusty on her face. None of that Miss Owens business. You are family, dear girl, and you are safe now. Dorothy pulled her into an embrace that was both surprising and somehow exactly what Martha needed. Come, let us get you settled. You look like you have been traveling through hell itself. Something like that, Martha murmured. They walked together up Main Street, Dorothy keeping up a steady stream of conversation that required little response from Martha. The boarding house was a 2-story structure painted white with green shutters, larger than most of the surrounding buildings. A sign that read Mountain View Boarding House swung gently in the breeze. We have 8 rooms for boarders, Dorothy explained as they climbed the front steps. Currently all occupied, mostly miners, a few businessmen. I run a respectable establishment, Martha. No drinking, no gambling, no women of ill repute. Breakfast at 6, dinner at 7. Sundays we close the dining room and everyone fends for themselves so we can attend church. Martha nodded, following her aunt inside. The interior was clean and well-maintained, with simple furniture and curtains on every window. The smell of bread baking drifted from somewhere deeper in the house. Your room is upstairs, away from the boarders. You will help me with cooking, cleaning, laundry, and managing the accounts. In return, you will have room, board, and a small wage. Does that suit you? More than suits me. Thank you, Aunt Dorothy. I do not know what I would have done if you had not answered my letter. Dorothy's expression softened. Your mother was my dearest friend before she became my sister by marriage. When she died bringing you into this world, I promised her I would look after you if you ever needed it. I am only sorry it took such tragedy to bring you to my door." Martha felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. She had cried enough over Clayton Marsh. He deserved none of her tears, yet they came anyway, for the dreams he had shattered, for the innocence he had stolen. The first weeks passed in a blur of work that Martha welcomed. She scrubbed floors until her hands were raw, kneaded bread until her arms ached, and fell into bed each night too exhausted to dream. The boarders were polite but kept their distance, perhaps sensing she had no interest in conversation. Dorothy asked no questions about Nevada, about what had happened, and Martha was grateful for the silence. It was a Thursday evening in late May when Nathan Zimmerman first walked through the door of the Mountain View boarding house. And though Martha did not know it then, her carefully constructed walls were about to face their first real challenge. She was setting the table for dinner when the front door opened and a man stepped inside, bringing with him the smell of leather and open air. Martha glanced up automatically, then found herself pausing, her hands still full of silverware. He was tall, probably in his late 20s, with dark hair that brushed his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. His face was weathered in the way of men who spent their lives outdoors, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He wore typical cowboy attire, denim trousers, a dark shirt, a leather vest, and boots that had seen serious use. A hat hung down his back from a cord around his neck, and he carried saddlebags over one shoulder. "Good evening," he said, his voice a low rumble that was somehow gentle. "I am looking for a room. The man at the general store said you might have one available." Dorothy emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "That depends. I run a respectable house, Mr. Zimmerman, Nathan Zimmerman, and I am a respectable man, madam. I am the new foreman at the Bennett Ranch, just hired on. I will be in town for a few months at least, helping them establish their breeding program for cattle. I need somewhere clean and quiet to lay my head. The Bennett Ranch. I know Samuel Bennett. Good man." Dorothy's expression warmed slightly. "I do have one room available. $3 a week includes breakfast and dinner. No drinking, no gambling, no improper behavior." "That suits me fine, madam. I am not much for any of those things." Nathan's gaze drifted back to Martha, who realized she was still standing frozen with silverware in her hands. "Evening, miss." Martha felt her throat close up. She managed a small nod but could not force words past her lips. Those eyes were too kind, too steady, and something about the way he looked at her made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through to the broken places inside her. "This is my niece, Martha," Dorothy said when Martha remained silent. "She helps me run the place." "Martha, dear, finish setting the table. Mr. Zimmerman, let me show you to your room." As they disappeared up the stairs, Martha released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands were shaking slightly as she placed the last of the forks and knives. This was ridiculous. He was just a man, just another boarder. She had served meals to 8 men every night for weeks without incident. But something about Nathan Zimmerman unsettled her in a way she could not name. Dinner that evening was awkward for Martha. Nathan sat at the far end of the long table, speaking politely with the other boarders about cattle and weather, and the condition of the mountain passes. His voice was educated, suggesting schooling beyond what most cowboys received, but he spoke without arrogance. He laughed at jokes, asked thoughtful questions, and seemed genuinely interested in what others had to say. Martha moved through her duties mechanically, serving food and refilling coffee cups, trying to ignore the way her skin prickled with awareness every time she came near Nathan's end of the table. Once, their eyes met across the room and she saw something in his expression, a softness, a question before she looked away quickly. After dinner, as she cleared the dishes, she overheard two of the miners talking about the new foreman. "Bennett hired well with that one," the older miner said. "I worked with Zimmerman down in Colorado a few years back. Best hand with horses I ever saw and fair with the men under him. Good in a tight spot, too." "Heard he had some trouble down south," the younger miner replied. "Something about a range war. He stood up for what was right, that is all. Takes courage to go against your employer when they are in the wrong. He testified against the ranch owner who was trying to drive homesteaders off their legal claims. Cost him his position, but he slept with a clear conscience." Martha filed this information away without meaning to. So Nathan Zimmerman was principled. That was nice. It did not matter to her. She was not interested in men, in their principles or their kind eyes or anything else about them. The next morning, Martha was in the kitchen before dawn, as usual, helping Dorothy prepare breakfast. She was mixing biscuit dough when she heard footsteps on the back stairs that led down from the second floor. "Good morning," Nathan's voice came from the doorway. "I am sorry to intrude. I woke early and wondered if I might have some coffee before breakfast." Dorothy smiled. "Of course." "Martha, dear, pour Mr. Zimmerman some coffee." Martha wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron and moved to the stove where the coffee pot sat. She could feel Nathan's presence behind her, too close in the small kitchen. Her hands shook slightly as she poured, and a few drops splashed onto the saucer. "Thank you," Nathan said softly as she turned to hand him the cup. His fingers brushed hers as he took it, and Martha jerked back as if burned. "You are welcome," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She fled back to her biscuit dough, keeping her eyes firmly on her work. She could feel him watching her for a moment before Dorothy engaged him in conversation about the ranch. Martha focused on kneading the dough, trying to ignore how her heart was racing. This was absurd. She was being absurd. He had barely touched her hand. It meant nothing. But it had been so long since any man had touched her, even accidentally, and she had not wanted to flinch away. That was what terrified her. For 2 years, she had been content in her isolation, in her certainty that she wanted nothing to do with men ever again. Nathan Zimmerman had been in the house less than 24 hours, and already he was shaking the foundation of that certainty. Over the following weeks, Martha tried desperately to maintain her distance. She served Nathan's meals quickly and efficiently, answered his polite questions with brief responses, and avoided being in the same room with him whenever possible. It should have been easy. She had perfected the art of being invisible, of moving through spaces without truly occupying them. But Nathan seemed determined to see her, to draw her out. He always thanked her for the meals, always asked how her day had been, always held doors open and stepped aside to let her pass. He was unfailingly courteous to everyone, but Martha could not shake the feeling that he paid particular attention to her. "You are being foolish," she told herself sternly one evening as she scrubbed dishes in the kitchen. "He is just a polite man. It means nothing. Talking to yourself is the first sign of madness, or so they say." Martha nearly dropped the plate she was washing. She spun around to find Nathan standing in the kitchen doorway, a slight smile on his face. It was late, well after dinner, and all the other boarders had retired to their rooms or gone out for the evening. "I am sorry," he said quickly, raising his hands. "I did not mean to startle you. I came down for some water." "The pump is there," Martha said, pointing with one soapy hand. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. Nathan crossed to the pump and filled a glass, but instead of leaving, he leaned against the counter and watched her work. "You know, you have been here almost 2 months now, and I do not think I have heard you speak more than a dozen words at a time." "I am not much for conversation," Martha said stiffly, returning to her dishes. "That is all right, I can talk enough for both of us." There was humor in his voice. "Though I admit I am curious about you. Your aunt says you came from Nevada." Martha's hand stilled in the water. "I would rather not discuss it." "That is fair." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I left Colorado because of things I would rather not discuss too. Sometimes a fresh start is what a person needs." Despite herself, Martha glanced over at him. His expression was open, honest, with no trace of the calculation she had learned to watch for in Clayton's face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you look like someone who has been hurt badly, and I want you to know that not everyone is looking to hurt you again." He set down his glass. "I will let you finish your work. Good night, Martha." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing there with her hands in dishwater and her mind in chaos. How dare he? How dare he see through her defenses so easily, speak so directly to the fears she kept locked away? And yet, there had been no malice in his words, only a gentle kindness that made her want to cry. That night, Martha lay in bed and allowed herself to think about Nathan Zimmerman for the first time. Really think about him, not just dismiss him as another man to be avoided. He was handsome, certainly, but that was not what drew her attention. Clayton had been handsome too, beautiful even, with his golden hair and charming smile. No, what unsettled her about Nathan was the steadiness in him, the quiet strength that did not need to announce itself. The way he treated everyone with the same respect, from Dorothy to the youngest miner at the boarding house. The way he looked at her as if she mattered, as if her silence and distance had not made her invisible after all. She remembered what the miner had said, that Nathan had stood up for what was right even when it cost him. That took a kind of courage Martha understood. She had stood up to Clayton, had defended herself when she had to, and it had cost her everything she thought her life would be. "No," she whispered into the darkness. "No, I am not doing this. I am not letting another man into my heart." But her heart, it seemed, had ideas of its own. The next Sunday, Martha attended church with Dorothy as usual. It was a small congregation, meeting in a building that served as both schoolhouse and church depending on the day. Martha typically sat in the back and let the words of the sermon wash over her without truly listening, finding a strange peace in the ritual even if the content did not touch her. This Sunday, she was startled when Nathan slid into the pew beside her, removing his hat and offering a small nod of greeting. He smelled like soap and leather, and Martha found herself acutely aware of his presence, of the space he took up, of the warmth radiating from his body in the cool morning air. She tried to focus on the preacher's words about forgiveness and redemption, but all she could think about was the man sitting next to her. Once, during a hymn, their arms brushed as they shared a hymnal, and Martha felt that touch all the way to her bones. After the service, as people gathered outside to talk, Nathan fell into step beside her. "Might I walk you back to the boarding house?" he asked. "I am with my aunt," Martha said quickly. "I know. I will walk you both," he smiled. "I promise not to bite." Dorothy, who had been talking with a neighbor, joined them. "Mr. Zimmerman, how kind of you to escort us home." And so Martha found herself walking through Alta's dusty streets with Nathan on one side and Dorothy on the other, listening to them discuss the sermon and the upcoming social at the church. She said little, but Nathan drew her in with questions that required more than yes or no answers, about her thoughts on the preacher's message, about whether she had tried the new bakery that had opened. "I have not been," Martha admitted. "I am usually too busy with the boarding house." "Then you should go," Nathan said. "Everyone deserves a sweet now and then. Tell you what, I will make you a deal. If you let me buy you a piece of pie at the bakery this week, I will help your aunt move those heavy supply crates that came in yesterday." "Mr. Zimmerman, you do not need to bribe us to help with crates," Dorothy laughed. "I know. But I want an excuse to spend time with your niece, and she is skittish as a wild horse around me." He said it plainly, with no embarrassment, looking directly at Martha. Martha felt her cheeks flush hot. "I am not skittish." "Then prove it. Have pie with me." It was a challenge, simple and direct, and Martha found herself responding to it before she could think better. "Fine. Wednesday afternoon." Nathan's smile was brilliant. "Wednesday afternoon it is." Martha spent the next 3 days in a state of nervous anticipation she had not felt in years. She told herself repeatedly that it was just pie, just a simple outing with a man who was being friendly. It meant nothing. It could not mean anything, because she was not allowing it to. But she found herself washing her best dress, the green one that brought out her eyes, and pinning her dark hair with more care than usual on Wednesday afternoon. Dorothy noticed, but said nothing, just smiled knowingly as Martha left the boarding house. Nathan was waiting outside, wearing a clean shirt and that same steady smile. "You look lovely," he said simply. "Thank you," Martha murmured, falling into step beside him. The bakery was a small establishment run by a widow from back east, and the smell of fresh bread and sugar hung heavy in the air. Nathan ordered 2 pieces of apple pie and coffee, then led Martha to a small table by the window. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. The pie was excellent, sweet and tart and perfectly flaky. Martha had not realized how much she missed simple pleasures like this. "Tell me something about yourself," Nathan said eventually. "Something real." "What do you mean?" "I mean something that matters to you, not just facts. Something true." He leaned forward, his gray eyes intent on her face. "I will go first. I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My father died when I was 12, and my mother worked herself to the bone keeping the place running. I learned everything I know about horses and cattle from her. She died 3 years ago, and I sold the ranch because I could not stand to be there without her. I have been wandering ever since, looking for a place that feels like home again." The raw honesty in his words struck something deep in Martha. She found herself responding before her defenses could stop her. "I was engaged once. He hurt me badly. He killed my father, and when I found out, he tried to kill me too. I shot him. The law called it self-defense, but the whole town thought I was either a victim to be pitied or a dangerous woman to be avoided. I could not bear either, so I came here to start over." Nathan's expression did not change, did not fill with the pity or horror Martha had expected. He simply nodded slowly. "That took courage to survive that and keep going. It did not feel like courage, it felt like cowardice, running away. There is no courage without fear. Anyone who faces what you faced and comes out the other side still willing to try, still willing to live, that is the bravest thing I can imagine." He reached across the table and very gently laid his hand over hers. "I am glad you survived, Martha Owens. I am glad you are here." Martha looked down at their joined hands. She should pull away. She should run, protect herself, maintain the walls she had built so carefully. But the warmth of his touch was seeping into places that had been cold for so long, and she found she did not want to pull away. Not yet. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I am afraid of being hurt again. I know, I would be afraid too in your place." Nathan's thumb moved gently over her knuckles. "I cannot promise that I will never hurt you accidentally, because people hurt each other sometimes even when they do not mean to. But I can promise that I will never deliberately cause you harm. I can promise that I will be honest with you even when it is hard, and I can promise to be patient while you learn to trust again." "Why?" the question burst from Martha's lips. "Why do you care? You barely know me." "I do not have a good answer for that. Something about you called to me from the first moment I saw you. Maybe it was the sadness in your eyes or the strength I could see beneath it. Maybe it was just fate, if you believe in such things." He smiled ruefully. "All I know is that I want to know you, Martha, really know you, and I am willing to wait as long as it takes for you to let me." Martha felt tears building behind her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. "I cannot promise anything. I am not asking you to. I am just asking you to give me a chance. Let me court you properly. Let me show you that not all men are like the one who hurt you." It was too much, too fast, and Martha's instinct was to refuse to protect herself. But beneath the fear was something else, something that had been dormant for so long she had almost forgotten it existed. Hope, fragile and tentative, but there nonetheless. "All right," she heard herself say, "but slowly, we go slowly." "As slow as you need," Nathan agreed. "May I walk you home?" They left the bakery together, and this time when Nathan offered his arm, Martha took it. Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Nathan would rise early and join Martha in the kitchen for coffee before breakfast, and they would talk quietly while Dorothy cooked and pretended not to listen. He told her about the ranch, about the horses he was training, about his hopes to eventually have his own spread again. She told him about growing up in Nevada, about her father who had run a small store, about the books she loved to read when she had the chance. On Sundays, he walked her to and from church. On Wednesday and Saturday afternoons, when Martha had a few hours free, they would take walks through Alta, exploring the town and the edges of the surrounding mountains. Nathan was never pushy, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He held her hand when she let him, kept a respectful distance when she needed space, and talked or remained silent as the moment required. Martha found herself slowly, painfully, learning to relax around him. She laughed at his jokes, shared her opinions, even teased him occasionally. The other boarders noticed and commented approvingly, and Dorothy beamed like she had orchestrated the whole thing herself. But Martha's past was not so easily escaped. In early July, on a hot afternoon when the mountain sun beat down mercilessly, a stranger rode into Alta. Martha was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard the horse, heard boots on the front porch, heard a voice that made her blood run cold. "I am looking for Martha Owens. I was told she might be staying here." Martha's hands froze on the sheet she was pinning to the line. She knew that voice. Thomas Marsh, Clayton's older brother. The man who had sworn vengeance when the marshal ruled Clayton's death justified, who had shouted threats at her as she left Silver Creek. She heard Dorothy's voice, cautious and firm. "Who is asking?" "Thomas Marsh. I have business with Miss Owens." Martha's mind raced. She could run, slip out through the back alley. But where would she go? How long could she hide? And what might Thomas do to Dorothy or the others if Martha was not there? With shaking legs, she walked around to the front of the house. Thomas Marsh stood on the porch, taller and broader than his brother had been, with the same golden hair but harder eyes. Those eyes fixed on Martha with an expression of pure hatred. "There you are, you murdering witch," he snarled. "Mr. Marsh, I will ask you to leave," Dorothy said sharply. "This is private property. Not until I say what I came to say." Thomas stepped down from the porch, advancing on Martha. "You killed my brother. You shot him in cold blood and then lied about it, turned everyone against him, but I know the truth. Clayton was a good man, and you are nothing but a lying, that is enough." Nathan's voice cut across Thomas's rant like a whip. Martha had not even seen him approach, but suddenly he was there, stepping between her and Thomas, his posture relaxed but somehow dangerous. "This is none of your concern," Thomas spat. "You are threatening a woman on property where I reside. That makes it my concern." Nathan's voice was level, calm, but there was steel beneath it. "You have said your piece. Now it is time for you to leave. Not until I get justice for my brother. Your brother was a murderer and a brute who tried to kill an innocent woman. She defended herself and the law agreed. That is all the justice there is. Nathan took a step forward. You have two choices, Mr. Marsh. You can ride out of Alta peacefully, right now, and never come back. Or you can continue making threats, in which case I will fetch the marshal and have you arrested for harassment. For a long moment, the two men faced each other. Thomas was larger, but Nathan's presence seemed to fill the space between them. Martha held her breath, her heart hammering. Finally, Thomas backed down. "This is not over," he muttered. But he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Martha's legs gave out. She sank down onto the porch steps, shaking uncontrollably. Nathan was there immediately, kneeling beside her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You are safe," he murmured. "He is gone. You are safe." "He will come back," Martha gasped through the panic closing her throat. "He will not let this go. He will hurt you, hurt Dorothy, hurt everyone, all because of me. I should leave. I should go somewhere else." "You are not going anywhere," Nathan's voice was firm. "Listen to me, Martha. I am not going to let anything happen to you, neither will your aunt or any of the good people in this town. Thomas Marsh is a bully and a coward, and bullies run when faced with real opposition." "You do not understand," Martha said desperately. "Clayton was just like him. Charming on the outside, cruel underneath. He fooled everyone, including me, until it was too late. I thought I loved him, and he nearly destroyed me. I am not him." Nathan gently turned her face toward his, making her meet his eyes. "I am not Clayton Marsh. I will never hurt you the way he did, but you have to decide if you can believe that. You have to decide if you are going to let him win by running again, or if you are going to stand your ground and fight for the life you want." Martha stared at him, this man who had come into her life and somehow made her want things she thought were lost forever. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to choose better this time? "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know. But you are also strong, stronger than you think." He smiled gently. "And you are not alone anymore. Let me help you carry this." Something broke open inside Martha's chest, some final wall she had been holding in place. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out 2 years of pain and fear and loneliness. Dorothy came and sat beside them, rubbing Martha's back, and together they weathered the storm. That evening, Nathan went to see the marshal, a grizzled man named Porter who had been keeping the peace in Alta for a decade. He listened to the story, nodded thoughtfully, and promised to keep an eye out for Thomas Marsh. "I remember hearing about that case," Marshal Porter said. "The marshal over in Silver Creek is a friend of mine. He said there was no question it was self-defense, that Clayton Marsh was bad news. If his brother shows up causing trouble, I will handle it." Nathan also spoke with Samuel Bennett, his employer, who immediately offered the resources of the ranch if protection was needed. Word spread through Alta quickly, as it did in small towns, and Martha found herself surrounded by unexpected support. The other boarders promised to watch out for strangers. The women from church stopped by to check on her. Even the miners, rough men who rarely spoke to her, nodded respectfully when they passed and positioned themselves protectively when they were around. But it was Nathan's constant presence that truly made Martha feel safe. He took to walking her anywhere she needed to go. He taught her to shoot a rifle properly, taking her out to a clearing in the mountains where she could practice without an audience. He never made her feel weak or helpless, but he made it clear that she did not have to face her fears alone. And slowly, through his actions more than his words, he showed her what love could be when it was real. Not the passionate, consuming infatuation she had felt for Clayton, which had blinded her to his true nature. but something steadier, deeper, built on respect and trust and genuine caring. One evening in late July, Nathan asked Martha to take a ride with him. He borrowed a gentle mare from the ranch for her, and they rode out into the mountains as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. They stopped at a meadow surrounded by aspens, their leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Nathan helped Martha down from her horse and led her to a flat rock that overlooked the valley below. Alta spread out in the distance, small and peaceful in the fading light. "I have been thinking," Nathan said, taking Martha's hand in his, "about the future, about what I want." Martha's heart began to race. "And what do you want?" "A ranch of my own, not huge but big enough. Horses and cattle, good land, a solid house." He paused. "A family, children. Someone to share it all with." He turned to face her fully. "I want all of that with you, Martha." "Nathan." Martha's voice caught. "I know it has not been long, and I know you have reasons to be cautious, but I love you, Martha Owens. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you have fought to rebuild yourself. I love how you hum when you cook, and how you always give the biggest portions to the miners who work the hardest. I love your laugh, which I feel privileged to hear, because I know how hard one it is." Tears were streaming down Martha's face now. "I am so broken. I do not know if I can be what you need." "You are not broken. You are healing, and that is different." Nathan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "I do not need you to be perfect. I just need you to be willing to try, to build a life with me one day at a time. Can you do that?" Martha looked into his eyes and saw nothing but love and honesty and hope. She thought about the past 2 months, about how Nathan had been patient and kind and true to every promise he made. She thought about how she felt when she was with him, not afraid but alive, not diminished but seen and valued. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I can try. I want to try." Nathan's smile was radiant. "Is that a yes to courting or a yes to more?" "I love you," Martha said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I did not want to. I fought it. But I love you, Nathan Zimmerman. I love your patience and your strength and the way you see the best in everyone. I love how you make me feel safe without making me feel small. I love the future I can imagine when I am with you. Then marry me." Nathan said it simply, directly. "Not today, not tomorrow, whenever you are ready, but marry me, Martha. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you what love should be." "Yes." Martha was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Nathan kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Martha kissed him back without fear, without hesitation. This was nothing like the consuming passion Clayton had offered, which had burned bright and destructive. This was warmth and safety and homecoming, and it was better than anything she had imagined. They stayed in the meadow until the stars came out, talking about their future, about the ranch Nathan wanted to buy, about the life they would build together. Martha felt lighter than she had in years, as if some terrible burden had been lifted from her shoulders. But the peace was not to last. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday night, Thomas Marsh returned to Alta. Martha and Nathan were walking back from the church social, along with Dorothy and several other townspeople, when they heard shouting from the direction of the boarding house. They arrived to find Thomas Marsh, clearly drunk, standing in the middle of the street with a pistol in his hand. "Martha Owens," he bellowed, "come out and face what you have done." "Get inside," Nathan said quietly to Martha, pushing her toward Dorothy. "Marshal Porter is already on his way." "I am not hiding," Martha said, surprising herself with her own firmness. "He cannot terrorize me forever." She stepped forward and Nathan moved with her, a solid presence at her side. "What do you want, Thomas? Justice?" Thomas swayed on his feet. "You killed my brother and got away with it. Someone has to pay." "Your brother tried to kill me after murdering my father," Martha called back, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I defended myself. The law agrees. This has to end, Thomas. Drinking and threatening people will not bring Clayton back. Do not you dare say his name." Thomas raised the pistol, pointing it unsteadily in Martha's direction. The world seemed to slow down. Martha saw Nathan move, stepping fully in front of her. She heard Dorothy scream. She saw Marshal Porter running down the street, shouting for Thomas to drop the weapon. The gunshot was deafening in the quiet evening. But it was Thomas who fell, not Nathan. The marshal's bullet had been true, catching Thomas in the shoulder and sending him spinning to the ground, his own gun flying from his hand. Martha stood frozen as the marshal and several men rushed forward, disarming and restraining Thomas, whose drunken rage had dissolved into pained sobbing. Nathan turned to her, checking her over frantically. "Are you hurt? Did he hit you?" "No, I am fine." Martha was shaking again, but this time it was different. This time she had not run. She had not hidden. She had faced her fear and she had survived. Thomas Marsh was taken to the jail, where a doctor tended his wound before he was locked up. Marshal Porter informed them that Thomas would be charged with public drunkenness, illegal discharge of a weapon, and attempted murder. He would be going to prison for a long time. "It is over," Nathan said softly that night as he held Martha on the porch of the boarding house. "He cannot hurt you any more. I know." Martha leaned against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I think I needed to face him one more time to prove to myself that I was not going to run. You were incredibly brave. I was terrified. But you were there, and Dorothy and the marshal and half the town. I realized I had people who would stand with me. That changed everything." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "You will always have me standing with you for as long as I live." They were married in September, on a crisp autumn morning when the aspens had turned gold and the air smelled of wood smoke and coming winter. The small church was packed with townspeople who had come to celebrate, and Dorothy cried happy tears throughout the ceremony. Martha wore a new dress, pale blue like the mountain sky, with white flowers in her hair. Nathan wore his best suit and could not stop smiling as he said his vows. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed Martha with a tenderness that made her heart overflow. The reception was held at the boarding house, with food and music and dancing. Martha danced with Nathan, with her aunt, with the miners and ranchers who had become her friends. She laughed more than she had in years, and every time she looked at her new husband, she felt a surge of joy so intense it almost frightened her. As the party wound down and guests began to depart, Nathan pulled Martha aside. "Ready to see your wedding present?" "What wedding present?" He just smiled and led her to his horse, helping her up before mounting behind her. They rode through Alta and out to the west, where the valley opened up into grazing land. There, in the fading sunlight, Martha saw a half-built house sitting on a gentle rise, with mountains behind it and a stream running nearby. "I bought the land last month," Nathan explained as they dismounted. 200 acres, enough for a good herd and plenty of horses. "Samuel Bennett is selling me breeding stock at a fair price, and I have money saved from years of working. The house will be finished by the first snow." Martha walked to the house, touching the new wood, imagining the walls and rooms and life that would fill this space. "It is perfect." "It is ours." Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Our ranch, our home, our future. The Z-Barrow Ranch, Z-Barrow, for Zimmerman and Owens. Thought we should both be represented." He spun her to face him. "What do you think, Mrs. Zimmerman?" Martha smiled, and it was radiant, unguarded, full of genuine happiness. "I think I am the luckiest woman in Utah." They moved into the house in late October when the roof was on and the windows installed, though the interior was still rough. Martha did not care. She had helped paint the walls, had chosen the placement of every room, had planned the kitchen where she would cook and the porch where they would sit on summer evenings. The first night in their new home, Nathan built a fire in the stone fireplace he had constructed with his own hands. They sat together on a quilt, eating a simple dinner of bread and cheese, and Martha thought she had never been more content. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For not giving up on me, for being patient, for showing me that love does not have to hurt." Nathan pulled her close. "You did the hard work, Martha. You chose to trust again, to hope again. That was all you." "We did it together," Martha corrected. "I could not have done it without you." The first year of their marriage was hard work but filled with joy. They built up the ranch together, Nathan handling the cattle and horses, while Martha managed the accounts and helped with the physical labor when needed. She learned to rope and brand, to deliver calves and break horses to the saddle. Her hands became calloused, her skin tanned, and she had never felt stronger or more capable. Dorothy visited often, beaming with pride at what her niece had built. The boarding house continued to thrive, and she had hired a new girl to help with the work. She and Martha remained close, and Nathan treated Dorothy with the respect and affection of a beloved relative. In the spring of 1885, Martha realized she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sun set over their land. "I am with child," she said simply, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat belly. Nathan's face went through a series of emotions: shock, joy, fear, wonder, before settling on pure happiness. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be. The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday." He kissed her with a passion that still made her heart race. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Martha asked, suddenly uncertain. Happy does not begin to cover it. Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "You have given me everything, Martha. A home, a purpose, a future. And now a child. I could not ask for more." The pregnancy was not easy. Martha was sick for the first few months, and the mountain winter was harsh. But Nathan was endlessly patient, caring for her and the ranch both, never complaining about the extra work. Dorothy came to stay for the last month, helping prepare for the baby's arrival. In March of 1886, on a night when spring snow fell gently outside, Martha gave birth to a son. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Martha was certain she would not survive. But Dorothy and the midwife from town guided her through, and when she finally heard her baby's cry, every moment of pain was forgotten. Nathan held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Martha. Thank you." They named him Jacob Zimmerman, and he had his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. Nathan was a devoted father from the first moment, changing diapers and walking the floor with a fussy baby, singing off key lullabies that never failed to make Martha laugh. As Jacob grew, Martha marveled at the life she had built. She had been so certain that Clayton's betrayal had destroyed her capacity for trust and love. But here she was, surrounded by evidence that she had been wrong. She had survived. She had healed. And she had found a love that was deeper and truer than anything she had imagined. When Jacob was 2, Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep. Martha mourned deeply, but she was grateful for the years they had shared, for the refuge Dorothy had offered when Martha had nowhere else to turn. They buried her in the Alta Cemetery with half the town in attendance, testament to the impact she had made on the community. Martha and Nathan sold the boarding house and used the money to expand the ranch, buying more land and building a proper barn. The Z-Barrow Ranch became known for its quality horses, and people came from all over Utah to buy Nathan's stock. In 1889, Martha gave birth to twin daughters, Emily and Grace. The house filled with noise and laughter, with children running through rooms and Nathan teaching Jacob to rope, while Martha showed the girls how to bake bread. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan and Martha rode back to the meadow where he had first proposed. The children were spending the night with a neighbor, giving them a rare evening alone. "You ever regret it?" Nathan asked as they sat together watching the sunset. "Marrying me, building this life." Martha looked at him, this man who had shown her what real love looked like, who had been patient and kind and true through every challenge they faced. "Not for a single moment. You saved me, Nathan." "No," he shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just had the privilege of being there to see it." "We saved each other," Martha said, taking his hand. "I was so broken when I came to Alta. I thought I would never be whole again. But you showed me that broken things can heal, that damaged hearts can love again. You gave me a future I never thought I would have. And you gave me a home," Nathan replied. "Not just this ranch, but a real home filled with love and family and purpose. You are my home, Martha. You always will be." They kissed as the sun dipped below the mountains. Two people who had found each other in the midst of pain and built something beautiful from the ashes of the past. The years continued to pass, bringing joys and challenges in equal measure. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Jacob grew into a responsible young man who shared his father's love of horses. Emily and Grace were bright and spirited, keeping their parents constantly on their toes. In 1895, when Jacob was 9 and the twins were 6, Martha gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas, after the brother she wanted to honor with the name rather than the man who had tried to hurt her. This Thomas would be different, raised with love and respect, and the name would carry new, better associations. The children grew up hearing stories of how their parents met, though Martha and Nathan were careful about how much they shared regarding the darker parts of Martha's past. The children knew their mother was strong, that she had overcome hardship, and that she and their father loved each other deeply. That was what mattered. As the new century approached, Martha would sometimes stand on her porch and look out at the land she and Nathan had built together. The house had been expanded twice to accommodate their growing family. The barn was large and well-maintained, filled with beautiful horses. Cattle grazed on the hillsides, and the stream still ran clear and cold. But more than any of that, what filled Martha with overwhelming gratitude was the laughter that echoed through her home. The children who ran to greet Nathan when he came in from the fields. The simple moments of breakfast together and bedtime stories and quiet evenings by the fire. She had given up on love after what Clayton did. She had believed herself too damaged, too broken to ever trust again. But Nathan had shown her that not all men are cruel. He had been patient when she was afraid, gentle when she was hurting, and steadfast when she needed someone to lean on. He had not fixed her because she was not something that needed fixing. He had simply loved her, completely and without reservation, and given her the space and safety to heal herself. On a spring morning in 1900, Martha woke to find Nathan already awake, watching her with that same soft expression he had worn on their wedding day. "What are you thinking about?" she murmured, snuggling closer to him. "How lucky I am. How every day I wake up next to you is a gift." He kissed her forehead. "How I would live the past 16 years exactly the same way if given the choice, because they led me here to this moment with you." Martha's eyes filled with happy tears. After all these years, he could still make her cry with the simple honesty of his love. "I love you, Nathan Zimmerman, more than I thought it was possible to love another person. And I love you, Martha Zimmerman, today, tomorrow, and every day after that until my last breath." From downstairs came the sound of children waking, feet running, voices calling for their parents. Their life, their beautiful, chaotic, perfect life, was beginning another day. Martha rose and dressed, ready to face whatever the day might bring, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, that she was home, that she had found her happily ever after with a cowboy who had seen past her wounds to the strength beneath. The years continued their inevitable march, but the foundation Nathan and Martha had built together remained solid. The ranch flourished, becoming a landmark in the region, known not just for quality livestock but for the integrity of its owners. Nathan's reputation for fairness spread, and he was often called upon to mediate disputes between neighbors or to advise younger ranchers just starting out. Martha became a pillar of the community in her own right. She organized fundraisers for the church, helped establish a proper school in Alta so children did not have to travel to the next town, and quietly assisted families who had fallen on hard times. She never forgot what it felt like to be desperate and alone, and she made sure no one in their community would experience that if she could help it. Jacob, their eldest, showed a natural gift with horses that surpassed even his father's considerable skill. By the time he was 16, people were bringing their most difficult animals to him, and he could gentle them with a patience and understanding that seemed almost magical. Nathan watched his son with undisguised pride, knowing the ranch would be in good hands when the time came. The twins, Emily and Grace, were as different as two people could be despite being born minutes apart. Emily was practical and business-minded, helping her mother with the ranch accounts and proving to have a sharp head for numbers. Grace was artistic and gentle, filling the house with drawings and songs, showing compassion to every injured creature she encountered. Young Thomas, the baby of the family even as he grew into a sturdy boy, had inherited his mother's determination and his father's steady temperament. He tagged along after Jacob constantly, learning everything his older brother would teach him. In 1905, when Jacob was 19, he met a young woman named Sarah at a church social in a neighboring town. She was the daughter of a schoolteacher, intelligent and kind, and when Jacob brought her home to meet his parents, Martha saw in his eyes the same look Nathan had once given her. Love, real and true and deep. "She is wonderful," Martha told her son later, "but take your time. Build a friendship first, a foundation. The strongest loves grow slowly." Jacob smiled. "You and Father taught me that. I am in no rush. I want to know her, really know her, before I ask her to share my life." Martha hugged him tightly, grateful that her son had learned from their example, that he would approach love with care and respect rather than rushing headlong into passion without wisdom. Jacob and Sarah courted for 2 years before he proposed, and they married in the spring of 1907. Nathan and Martha built them a house on the eastern edge of the ranch property, and Jacob took over more of the day-to-day operations, allowing Nathan to slow down slightly as he approached 50. Martha was 47, still strong and capable, but she appreciated the extra time she and Nathan had together as their children grew more independent. They would ride out together in the evenings, just the two of them, talking about their day or simply enjoying the comfortable silence that comes from decades of companionship. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Nathan took Martha's hand. "Do you remember that meadow where I proposed? Of course. We have been back many times over the years. I was thinking we should go there tomorrow, just you and me like old times." Martha smiled. "I would like that." The next day they rode out together, following the familiar path into the mountains. The meadow was just as beautiful as Martha remembered, perhaps more so with the weight of memory and meaning attached to it. They dismounted and walked to their favorite spot, the flat rock overlooking the valley. 22 years, Nathan said softly. 22 years since I asked you to marry me in this spot. The best decision I ever made was saying yes, Martha replied, leaning against him. I brought you here today because I wanted to tell you something, away from the children and the ranch and all the daily distractions. Nathan turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I know I tell you every day that I love you, but I wanted you to hear it here, where it all began. You are the love of my life, Martha. You are my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, and the reason I wake up grateful every single morning. There is no one I would rather have spent these years with, no one I would rather spend all my remaining years with. Martha felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, the overflow of a heart too full to contain its joy. I was so lost when I came to Alta, so convinced that I was broken beyond repair. You showed me that I was wrong. You loved me back to life, Nathan. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything, Nathan corrected gently. That is what real love does. It is not one person saving another. It is two people choosing to build something together every single day. They stood there in the meadow, holding each other as the afternoon sun warmed their faces. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded their wildest dreams. As they rode back to the ranch, Martha reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain of her past had not disappeared completely. She still thought of her father sometimes, still felt a flash of remembered fear when she encountered men with golden hair like Clayton's. But those moments were rare now, and they no longer had the power to control her life. She had learned that healing was not about forgetting or pretending the past never happened. It was about integrating those experiences into who you were, acknowledging the scars while refusing to let them define you. She was stronger for what she had survived, more compassionate, more grateful for the good things in her life. And she had learned that love, real love, looked like Nathan. It looked like patience and kindness and choosing each other every day even when things were hard. It looked like laughter over breakfast and stolen kisses in the barn and hands held during church services. It looked like building something together, year after year, creating a legacy that would outlast them both. The years rolled on, bringing more changes and more blessings. Jacob and Sarah had 3 children of their own, giving Martha and Nathan grandchildren to spoil and love. Emily married a banker from Salt Lake City and moved to the capital, though she visited often. Grace became a teacher, taking over the school in Alta that her mother had helped establish. Thomas took over more of the ranch work as Nathan's arthritis began to trouble him in cold weather. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1914, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. Children and grandchildren filled every corner of the house, and neighbors and friends came from miles around to honor the couple who had become such an important part of the community. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Martha and Nathan found themselves alone on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. 30 years, Martha marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like you have always been part of my life. You have always been part of mine, Nathan said. Even before I met you, I think some part of me was waiting, searching for you. Martha rested her head on his shoulder. Do you remember what you said to me that day in the bakery when I told you I was afraid? I said a lot of things that day. You said you could not promise you would never hurt me accidentally, but you could promise to never deliberately cause me harm, to be honest even when it was hard, and to be patient while I learned to trust again. Martha lifted her head to look at him. You kept every one of those promises, Nathan. Every single one. "It was easy," Nathan said simply. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done." The winter of 1918 was hard. The influenza epidemic that was sweeping the world reached even their remote corner of Utah. The family was careful, limiting contact with others, but illness found them anyway. Young Thomas, now 23 and engaged to be married, fell sick first. Martha nursed him through it, and he recovered, though it took weeks. But Martha herself caught the illness in the process, and at 58, she was far more vulnerable than her son had been. Nathan never left her side. He bathed her fevered forehead, held water to her lips, and prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life. The children took turns sitting with her, but it was Nathan she reached for in her moments of clarity. Nathan, whose voice seemed to anchor her to the world. On the worst night, when the doctor quietly told Nathan to prepare himself, Martha's fever broke. She opened her eyes to find her husband slumped in a chair beside her bed, his head resting on the mattress near her hand, exhausted from days of sleepless vigilance. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice hoarse. His head shot up, his eyes wild with hope and fear. "Martha." "Oh God, Martha, you are awake." "I am sorry," she managed. "I am sorry I frightened you. Do not apologize." He was crying, tears streaming down his face as he held her hand carefully as if she might break. "Do not ever apologize. Just stay with me. I am not ready to lose you." "I will never be ready to lose you." "I am not going anywhere," Martha promised. "We still have more years together. I can feel it." And she was right. She recovered slowly, growing stronger each day, until by spring she was back to her normal routines, though perhaps a bit more tired than before. Nathan treated every day after that as a gift, even more so than he always had. They celebrated their 35th anniversary in 1919, their 40th in 1924. The ranch changed hands to Jacob and Thomas, who ran it together while Nathan and Martha transitioned to advisory roles. They had more grandchildren, then great-grandchildren, and their house remained the heart of the family, the place everyone gathered for holidays and celebrations. In the summer of 1929, on a warm afternoon very much like the one when they first met, Martha and Nathan sat together on their porch. They were both in their 70s now, slowed by age but still sharp and present. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Martha asked, her hand in Nathan's as it had been for 45 years. "What is that, my love?" "I was thinking about the day Thomas Marsh came to Alta the first time, how terrified I was, how certain I was that my past would destroy any chance at happiness." She squeezed his hand. "And then you stepped between us, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could have a future after all." "I would step between you and danger 1,000 times over," Nathan said, "though I am grateful I have not had to." "You did, though. Every day in the beginning you stepped between me and my fear, my pain, my certainty that I could not be loved. You were patient and kind, and you never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. That is because I could see what you could not. I could see the incredible woman you were, the strength and compassion and capacity for love that you thought Clayton had destroyed. He hurt you terribly, Martha, but he did not break you. You were bent, perhaps, but never broken. And you straightened yourself out, piece by piece, day by day." Martha leaned over and kissed her husband softly. "I love you, Nathan Zimmerman. Thank you for showing me that not all men are cruel. Thank you for being the man who proved that love could be kind and gentle and true." "Thank you for trusting me with your heart," Nathan replied. "Thank you for saying yes in that meadow all those years ago. Thank you for every day since." As the sun set over the mountains they had called home for nearly half a century, Martha and Nathan sat together in perfect contentment. They had built an extraordinary life from the ashes of Martha's past, had raised children and grandchildren who knew what real love looked like, had created a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. Martha had given up on love after what Clayton did to her. She had believed herself damaged, broken, incapable of trust. But Nathan had shown her the truth with infinite patience and unwavering devotion. Not all men were cruel. Some men were kind and steady and true. Some men could love without hurting, could build up rather than tear down, could be partners rather than tyrants. She had found such a man in Nathan, and he had found his match in her. Together they had proven that healing was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, and that love, real love, was worth every risk, every moment of fear, every leap of faith. Their story was not one of a man saving a broken woman. It was the story of two people choosing each other, day after day, year after year, and building something beautiful together. It was a story of resilience and hope, and the transformative power of genuine love. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Martha knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single moment of the journey that had brought her here, to this porch, to this man, to this life. Every pain, every fear, every moment of doubt had been worth it to arrive at this place of peace and joy and deep, abiding love. She had survived. She had healed. She had loved and been loved in return. And that, she thought as she rested her head on Nathan's shoulder, was the greatest happily ever after she could have ever imagined.